Alrighty, hello there. We are going live with my coding stream, and as is my wont, I think I'm still fussing around getting stuff set up. I do have my coffee though. I'm running a little late setting everything up this morning because I was fooling with Bespoke and pitching ideas for things that could make its visuals look even better, certainly for my purposes, and then running into some crashing bugs for stuff I was trying to do. So I'll just have to kind of set up as a talk here. But we should have a good stream for today, I think. What I'll be doing specifically excuse me, is, hey dude, Graph, Taylor Renzo, is we're going to be working on YLowpass some more. It's the one we were working on last week, and I think I can finish it up, take it through to the final thing, and have it ready to become a plugin. I've got a whole queue of stuff going on where there will be some exciting weeks as far as new stuff coming out. Notably, I have an update for Clip Only 2, which is designed to work better at high sample rates and does the correct sound even if you're at very high sample rates. And as a result of that, I built it in to the update of Pressure 5. And so now that is my new output bus thing. It's like built-in varying bus compression. And hang on a second. Give me a moment. I'm doing silly things like leaving my lights on in random places. I don't know why that is. I just know I want to fix it, so there we go. That wasn't important, but it would have bugged me. So yeah, Pressure 5 is coming. I've been updating Monitoring 2 some more, so now the only change to it is that it's using Airwindows Dark instead of Airwindows Not Just Another Dither. But there's a change that doesn't affect the sound or anything in it. Airwindows 2 uses enums instead of numbers for its array things, which means that it's a little bit more documented. Like if you looked at the code, you'd be able to see what it does a little bit more. Oh, funnily enough, I was just using high impact in something myself. That's probably doable, but I'm not necessarily the one to be able to do it. That said, if I could make it work on the axolotl, you'd be able to use that. And it's not that tricky of an algorithm, so it's possible I would be able to make it work on the axolotl, but then you'd have to get an axolotl and build it into a box or something, and that would be a bass pedal. Let me fool with my windows a little bit. And come to think of it, let me do my usual distract myself less technique, where I'll set up the window and then pause the screen. There's all this inside baseball stuff here. Well, if I have too many things to think about, you're just going to have to deal with the inside baseball. So I'm waiting for the screen to show the desktop the way it should. And then I'm going to pause that, and then I'm going to scooch OBS down so that I can see the frame rate and so on. And then put this window in front, and then put Chromium in front, and good enough. I guess we're off and running. Hi, I am down here now. So, Pressure 2 is, no, not Pressure 5 is something that I'm coming out with pretty soon, and I've been scrambling to get it together because I am doing another mixing project. You might remember a while back that there's a band called Ultrasonic, and I did their album Afterbirther in 2019, and it was very enjoyable. Well, they're back. The guy who's the leader of that band came back to me and was like, "Can you do my new album?" And I was like, "I would be super delighted. I loved your previous album." And we are starting to do it, and it's going great. I think it's sounding even better than the last time. And this time it's entirely in the box instead of on an analog console. Not that I had a fancy analog console back in the day, but the previous time it was all with like MIDI verbs and Delta Lab Effectron and an analog desk, even though it wasn't a very fancy analog desk. And this time I'm getting an even bigger and more analog sound in the box with the recent stuff going on. So that's exciting. I'm going to have another song mixing session tonight, in fact, so bit of a big day. And I also have my plugin making, so we'll try to do that. And like I said before, I'm also doing stuff in Bespoke, and I spent the morning fiddling with a bunch of interesting ideas there. Don't mind me pulling around the laptop to where I can operate it. My setup here is a little bit more cumbersome than it used to be, but we'll manage. At least now you can see it. If the screen starts flashing, tell me, because that means that the ATEM Mini is going south again. But I do have a proper heatsink it sits on now, so hopefully the new ATEM won't die on me. And this is what we were working on, because we're gearing up to do a revision on the Zplane plugins. And what we've got here, we'll just quickly build what we had and set it up into my usual rapid development thing where, boop, this is what we've got. We've got a crazy bonkers plugin, if I can find it. Here, let me find it in the list properly. That gave you a peek of everything I've been working on recently, so enjoy. But we've got this, and it's pretty whacked. In fact, I'm not sure all of these things are relevant to the label. Like this asymmetrical, I don't know if that's really what it is anymore. But, oh hey, it doesn't actually want to play, does it? Oh, it kind of does. So if I remember correctly, where I left off with this, we had it set up so it's a biquad filter, and it updates, and I think I have a variety of things here that might be worth doing. This seems to be a pre-gain thing, but some of these results, like peaking out at 50 dB, not good. So that needs attention. And I have this, which I don't think is really an asymmetrical control at all. Instead, it's doing something else, namely edge. So this weird filter that I'm making sure has a bunch of strange behaviors on it. We've got this real, like, electro-crackly neurofunk kind of just artifacts and weirdness, and it's not coming from the same thing that the artifacts of moving the frequency control would be, because those would be zipper noise artifacts, and this is something else. Zipper noise artifacts are being fixed by the new stuff going in here, and the difference between YLowpass and YLowpass is this. That's the difference. And we could make it ever more extreme. Or we can chill it out. And that's more fluid. But as soon as we start sneaking this in, so one of the things we're going to look at with this resonant edge thing, and I was doing all my experimenting on it in sine waves last time around, is making this usable and figuring out under what conditions does it straight up like crash and die and make the plugin unusable, because it's definitely sort of in the danger zone. Like, we can crank our resonance up and with our really low frequencies here, you can't really hear that. Let me try to get access to my meter and turn this up a little bit. That way you'll hear it through my little electret mic. There we go. So you can probably maybe hear this. The mic does let through bass pretty good. And when I peak asymmetrical in here, because this is not really asymmetrical, this is mislabeled, I need to fix this. We're getting a real edge on it, and we're also gating the quieter parts of it. It's cutting out. And the more I push that, the more that'll happen. Like, I can get more and more edge here. So clearly one of the things I'll be wanting to do is add a power factor so that I have more adjustment potential in that delicate stuff. That needs to be spread out to over the entire range of the control, because it's clearly acting like it instantly kicks in a nasty edge and that just expands, and by this point it's already extreme. And this is just more. I remember that it was doing something with the sines where the full range was useful, but I'm going to want most of the range of this control to be covering values like around here. So I basically need to take this that goes from 0 to 1 and have it be like power of itself comma like 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever, the 4th or 5th power. And that'll take the halfway points and make them half of that, then half of that, then half of that, then half of that. The next thing you know, you're in the usual, the range that'll be useful, except for that you've got this whole area to adjust it in. So let's go and do that right away, since that's the obvious thing. But first we're going to relabel, because asymmetrical really has nothing to do with what this is anymore. So we're going to call that res edge, because what we're doing, the artifact that this produces is taking the resonance and clipping it in a bizarre way where it's just throwing this gnarly, nasty edge onto everything. And then the rest of what we're going to do today is explore making it try to crash and then fixing its crashes. But we'll start with this. I might want to rearrange these into a more useful configuration, but right now that's not at the top of my mind. And let's see what we've got here. So POW factor, this is the thing. And it goes from 1 to 99. That's a pretty big number. So whatever we're doing here, let's go find out where it happens. Edit all in scope. Now we can go and look for those. I don't know how you do this in the modern Xcode, but in this Xcode you can do it. We're going to go look for this and find out how that works. And this is basically an editing of Torrid Gristle's distortion code and anti-distortion code, which has to do with the Console 6 algorithm. This is out of the Console 6 algorithm, which was a suggestion by Torrid Gristle. So what we're doing, and it turns out this is all we're doing, but it seems to work, is we are, I wonder if I can smooth the POW factor thing as well. I'll find out. Basically, we're doing our biquad. We're doing an interpolation code. We stripped away everything else, so we have only one layer of biquad, and we're using its resonance directly rather than just stacking them up. So that's another difference between this and the Z filter. So it's acting like a normal one, except for a normal biquad only has this. And my original biquad filters have this inside console 5. Namely, it does a sine function, and then it clips and does a arcsine function on the other side. So the original biquad and so on weren't actually purely biquad after all. They were running a layer of console because the biquad filter has a couple of delayed samples. And as such, if it's very resonant, it's like it's a kind of delay effect. So you can run console on it. And in fact, that's something that you can do with any standard DAW filter. You can take the standard DAW filter and put console channel in front of it and then console bus after it and run it effectively inside console, at which point all of the filtery type stuff and resonant type stuff is getting expanded as if it was the mix bus of your DAW. And that does change the sound. I think it changes the sound in a useful way, but it does change the sound. So it's no longer as mathematically perfect, but it may end up having better tone. And how I got here, because there's not that much here. Like, this is pretty much everything in the audio code, and that's the interpolation code. So if we skipped that, this is everything that we had. And our input gain, or in trim here, is nothing but a gain staging. It's like taking it back down afterwards. so you can clip internally. And the rest of this, the pow factor, is manipulating Torrid Crystal's console 6 code, the concept that I got from him. And rather than trying to simplify the pow factor thing, with this one, we're getting to crazy results because we are doing fractional powers, and we are doing powers that do not necessarily line up normally. When you do fractional powers, you wind up with asymmetrical behaviors, and that's probably where the asymmetrical label came from, but it doesn't accurately describe what the sound of the filter does, so we're not going to keep that. That's just what we had setting it up. So basically, what we've got here is biquad filter. We're interpolating it so it doesn't get zipper noise. It's probably worth interpolating this pow factor too, but that'll have limited usefulness because the glitching and distortion won't actually be minimized by interpolating that. That's going to be part of just what we're doing here. We're doing the input, which does have a hard clip, and then we have this behavior, the console 6 thing. But instead of just taking it literally as Torrid Crystal had it, we're observing that it's the power factor, and then we're adding other power factors up to 99th power. So this is conceivably a real CPU munching. I'll show you what zipper noise is. Just a moment. That's easily and quickly done because I have 2 plugins that demonstrate that now. FactStack maybe? Nah, I don't have. I'll do them one at a time. So if I go to biquad, we got a low pass filter. Frequency is fairly high, Q is fairly high, and when we move it, that is zipper noise. And the more Q, the more clearly you can hear it. What's happening is we're moving the coefficients of the filter, but we're only updating it every time the buffer comes around. So we're only updating it at the speed that the control updates rather than every sample. And that means it has this little sparkle. When I make it resonate the actual bass note, it gets loud. Whereas if I go to the new biquad Plus that I did, which has stuff that smooths out zipper noise, not perfectly, but it does it. And we do the same thing, all the Q. We don't get that because it's not updating it only at the beginning of each buffer. It's doing it smoothly. And you can hear my room rattling with those bass notes. Actually, I'm probably distorting your head with the bass notes. That's zipper noise. And the way that it is fixed is like this. We have 2 sets of parameters to use, 2 sets of coefficients. And we set up the coefficient like this and say, okay, the last coefficient, the set, the B set, are the new information coming in. And then the one that we're actually using here starts as the A1 at the beginning of the buffer and moves to the B1 at the end of the buffer. This is also where I could put the pow factor interpolation thing, so maybe that'd be a good idea to add. And we could also try making this number smaller, but for now, I'm not going to be too worried about that. But I am going to put this in, put in a nice high power factor, and we're going to scale this whole thing so that we have more control over the beginning of that curve. And while I'm at it, I already know that's going to work because I've done that so many times. So let me just add the power factor stuff. Let's see. So it's A and B versions of things that I'm going to want. So let me just tuck that in here. And I'm not going to need these. Let's see if I can comment them out and have that be fine, because in theory this should just work, although I'll also have to comment out the initialization. I don't really need to name both of them here, but I can. It'll work. And then up here, we're no longer using these because we commented them out, so I make those go away. And then I believe that's what I was calling them. And lastly, we are going to change here and do the same kind of stuff we were doing here. So let's update all the buffers in consistent places. Which means I have to move a thing. I don't know if you spotted what I have to move. The way this works, we do these, yeah, this is the B stuff that's being added, and I just made the A, B, the last go rounds B stuff. So I have to move this. This needs to go under here, because the new A is last go-round's B, and then this is the new B. So it starts with where we were before and ends with where we are now. And having done that, now I've got those. And now I just like steal one of these lines because I know this is implemented the right way. I'm not sure if the copy-paste thing is the same when it's your own code that was right there. Equals and this is the B form. Don't be misled by the fact that it says biquad A. I'll probably want to change that. And this is now an interpolated number as well, which may or may not be very helpful. I guess I'll find out pretty soon because it's time to try it and see what we've got. But yeah, and then I have a fixed biquad that is filtering ultrasonics, which is another thing that I've added since it's a filter, but it's also super nonlinear. I've got a bunch of craziness going on in there, so I've got a ultrasonic filter built in. I could do a second ultrasonic filter if I wanted. I don't know whether that will be truly necessary. It might be. This is an aggressive enough filter that it might just be. And again, we now have a power factor that goes in here, but rather than coming directly off of the control, which has zipper noise, it is interpolated. It makes connections between the previous one and the current one. And that will do another layer of smoothing. I could also do the same thing for the gain. Want to do the same thing for the gain while we're at it? See how it says in trim? We can do the same thing for in trim. Want to do that? Let's do that. Once you start doing this sort of thing, it's like, yay, let's do it for everything. And that's kind of how that's going to be. Let me not spill my coffee while doing this. What do you think, Infotis, as far as infrasonic filters? There's a number of things I could try with those. Oh, if it's a free DC offset removal, can you get source code? Is it open source? You know what? I might make that a long double because you know what? Every time I use it, it's just being multiplied with another long double. So the compiler and the CPU is going to have to promote this to be a long double anyway. And I may be able to speed things up a little bit by having it be the values I need. Let's go in and do that also with pow factor, because that is something else that I don't know whether pow factor needs to be long double. Maybe not. Pow factor isn't directly being multiplied with a long double. It's just operating in a context where the calculation will require that. But I do know that intrim is directly multiplied with, well, let's do all of them. I have a feeling that doing that calculation is going to force the power to be at the word length of the longest word length. So it might just, it's probably going to have to promote it to that anyhow. Where were we? We were doing intrim. Same deal. We need to make the old one be the previous one and then update the current one. And it's using about the same gain factor as McAdee, roughly. So 0.1 is unity gain. Do I have that represented in the H file? Let's find out. I do. So it defaults to unity gain. And hopefully people using it will recognize, oh, is that kind of like McAdee? And we'll know that you can get lots of extra boost out of it, or you can just not push it all that hard. Or indeed, you can pad it, but you can't pad it to literally 0 because we're also dividing by this number. Mind you, I could put in a output load. Like think about this while I do this hacking. Would you need it to be this auto gain correction thing, or would you need it to be its distinct and separate input and output gain? With the output gain perhaps being a 0 to 1 that you can pad it all the way to 0, because in that case both of them could go to 0. For now, however, we've got that. That is correctly represented. And now we need to do intrim correctly. And that needs to go here. And we do the same little formula as before. And now we should have not only pow factor, but also the gain. Oh, well, bro, you could look at the code. Oh, photos? Yeah, on Discord I have no friends. I just hang out in various places, so if you want to consider me a friend on Discord, then hang out in the Surge Synthesizer and Bespoke Discords, and you'll see me all over there, and I will remember you and know you as a friend. I just don't do the algorithmic. It's like being on Twitter or something. You don't want to get into the way that these programs try to tell you that you have friends and are engaged with people. It's best to not get into that kind of stuff, because it's like a phantasm. It doesn't actually mean anything, but it sucks you into interacting with the program. And we're done with this bit, I think. Let's see if it builds. Oh, hang on. I got something to do here. Oh, duh. Missed something. Seeing as we're getting our information from elsewhere. Oh, did I zero it? Yes, I did. Am I updating it correctly? Yes, I am. Okay, this time it should work. Boop. Now let's play with alien kittens a little bit more. And we can also play with the sign and see what that does. Oh, did this not work? Do we have a bug? We have some kind of bug. That's interesting sounding. I wonder what's happening here. If we put it to res edge. Nope. Wow. Okay, that's cool sounding, but it's not helpful. Let's glance over this and see if we can find anything that's obviously wrong. Those do seem about right. Oh, hang on. Intrim can't be that, at least the way we've got it set up, so we can never start it at 0. There's your problem. That has to start at our previous minimum setting. Now it should work. Yeah, I know you liked it, huh? Yeah, all that was I made it deal with a divide by 0 and it lost its damn mind. That's all that was. That should never happen, and it was a simple mistake. And intrim is made to never be smaller than this number because we're dividing by it. So there you go. Trust me, there will be an equally awesome noise to come. That was that problem. It's not meant to be made to be 0. Let's try that again from the top, because that was kind of silly. Do we have a functioning thing, or is it just a pile of explosion? It's still a pile of explosion, huh? Okay, at this point the plugin's actually working, and although it's giving like infinite output, we can make it go full dry, at which point it acts normal. Gain is not working, and something else here is not working. So we need to find out what went wrong with this. I don't think the problem is going to be in YLowpass H, because that's fairly normal stuff. So one of the things we need to do is dial some of this stuff back, and yeah, it was clipping 54 dB. Yeah, in the broadest of terms, what I do these days to avoid aliasing is these ultrasonic filters and running at higher sample rates. I do a combination of those, and I try to do my filtering in a distributed way across the entire mix. So I have specific ideas as far as what I'm doing. Not everybody agrees with that, but oh yeah, and 24K, the SP1200, I'm saving up for one of those. All of the Patreon money that I make over $2,000 a month directly goes towards the purchase of an SP1200, and I've got about $2,000 saved up, because a guy, and I'll mention this because I promised him that I would, a guy in Silicon Valley who's some kind of entrepreneur guy, like, dropped a bunch of money on me because he was like, oh, hey, you look cool. You seem to be doing good stuff, and you're doing open source things, and I'm doing stuff that could conceivably use those. So he was like, yeah, here, PayPal, boop. And my initial reaction was like, reject. And went, are you serious, dude? The hell? And when I talked to him, he was really nice. And so it's just one of those things where, you know, like I buy synthesizers, he apparently throws money at open source developers. And so I was like, okay, under the following conditions, the donation that you're about to make is going to go straight towards the SP1200. And if you want me to shout out anything, I will. To a point, like I'm not going to just start doing everything that you want, but think of something that you would like to have announced. And he said, tell your people to look into spherical harmonics. So look into spherical harmonics. They're apparently a weird concept that I don't entirely understand, but he thinks they're very important. He's working in like binaural sound localization and stuff, and there's a lot going on there. So the getting towards the SP1200 YLowpass, that will happen when I can afford to buy SP1200. On the other hand, I have some cool things to announce while I work on this. Namely, I have a new microphone coming, and I intend to take my Sunday recording mic that you've seen on streams before and the new mic, and I'm going to set up a situation where I have this little electret mic, probably with the pop filter off and everything, literally to the side of the Roswell Colaris, and literally to the side of the new mic that I just ordered this morning, a Beyer M500 came up for purchase. Reverb had one, and it was a pretty reasonable price. And assuming it's in good condition, they said that it was, I leapt upon it and bought it, and so I'm going to have a Beyer ribbon mic of the sort that was used by literally the Eagles on their live dates and classic recordings, because a lot of their sounds they got through having those wonderful voices into a particular brand of ribbon mic that's actually kind of bright. Beyer M500 has a pop filter, and it has some unusual little behaviors as far as how the pop filter works. And the M500 is also a very bright microphone. It has a particular voicing to it. And electret condenser mics like this one are very uncolored. It's a tiny little diaphragm, and you've heard that it picks up like the bass from my system and so on, but it's going to sound appalling for doing lead vocals and things over because it doesn't have any nice coloration. But if I put another microphone that does have good coloration and then put this literally next to it so that it's like perfectly in phase and everything, I should be able to make, even if I have to write a plugin to do it, I'll record them down in stereo and then I'll do a subtract, or monitoring would do that actually, where I will have the difference between the like high quality but low vibe electric condenser mic, this one right here, and the much more expensive and delicate and so on Colares, which is meant to be like an ELAM, or the ribbon microphone, which the ribbon microphones have a real tone of their own and they do not react the same to high frequency stuff. They soften that. And if I can have the electret mic, which is more like a measurement mic, literally at the same place, taking in the same vocals, I can do that subtracting, and I can have a piece of information where I could write a plugin to make the electret mic sound more like a ribbon mic or sound more like the expensive ELAM clone. Because it's all about like distortions, and it's all about the manipulating, and it's like doing the Macity. It's like doing Macity, where I need the correct reference audio, and then I need to be able to produce the difference signal, and in such a way that I can analyze it, at which point I start working with the side of the signal, using Airwindows left to mono or right to mono or whatever, using the side of the signal that is this simple lavalier mic, and doing the plugin and making the plugin sculpt the sound of this, which is largely uncolored. It's like a digital capture. It's super unflattering. And make that act like the fancy mic. And I'm not going to get all the way. In particular, one of the things I will never get out of this is noise performance. Because like the Roswell Colares, brilliant noise performance. The polarity is very different. If you're slightly off axis, it'll be super different from the electret. But you can afford a electret lavalier mic with very similar kinds of tone and sound to the one that I've got on right now. It's not hard to get those. Those are accessible. And although I will never be able to deliver the noise performance of a real large diameter condenser mic, I can probably get some of the tone right. So let's get back to our coding. Oh yeah, I'm going to be using it on all the Bespoke streams because when I take a single input into Bespoke, it always seems to make it into a stereo channel and place the single input on the left. So I'm going to constantly be using those. Left to mono is very handy because there's no processing to it. It's just copying the word from one side over to both sides. So that's very handy. Now, here's one thing we need to look into. Oh, hang on. Did that wrong. There we go. Now we're back to this. And if we comment this out. Oh, hello. I was redefining that. That's not right. Interesting. Could that be my problem? Did you see what I did wrong there? I'll tell you what I did wrong. I have intrim_b defined in the H file as a long double. And then what I was doing here was going intrim_a equals intrim_b and then double intrim_b equals. I was like redefining it again. and then using who knows what. Interesting. Let's see if I can roll that back. We've got those the way they were supposed to be. We're redefining this. We're using these. We're applying this. But now what we're going to do is not redefine this number. We already have it. We don't need it again. Or technically I could define it here. And let's do the same thing here. That's going to be a problem no matter where I look at it. I already have this. This is defined elsewhere. Defining it again at a different word length is just making things confusing and weird. I don't need to redefine that. I've already got it. It's just doing, let's see what we get. This might clean up everything, because that was definitely a world of nope. Using something that I just defined and then referring to it elsewhere, and you're not supposed to define a variable twice at different word lengths. Having done that, do we now have a working behavior? Let's find out right away. Yep, it lives, it's alive. We don't need reso to get this low though. Also, I see a problem with what we're doing. Like, watch this. I can put that resonant edge on. But if I make the gain go lower than 0.1, the output will be amplified, and it'll do this. That's no good. It's nice and smooth now, though. It's kind of dubsteppy. Let's make it more so. Okay, new ideas. We need a little more stuff. We're gonna move stuff around a bit. And start to close things down. In fact, I think we're about ready to start losing some of these extra things. Hey Francis, hey everybody. So we'll say our default for frequency is 0.5. Default for reso and that can be 0, and default for output should be 1 because we're starting at unity gain. And then 6 should be 1 because it's dry wet, and we're going to lose some of these extra things now. I think we have arrived at a final position. Resonate. And if I scooch this over here, and then look on here and go out trim instead of in trim. I might still want that open. There we go. Oh, hang on. That was not right. Undo. And that's going to default to 1. And that's going to default to 0.1 actually. And our parameters are going to go gain 1, frequency is 2, resonation is 3, path factor is actually 4. So let's see, resonator is 3. Res edge is going to be 4, so that's here. Output is going to be 5, so that can move. And dry wet is 6. You'll see that I'm keeping them basically in order because it makes a little better sense for me that way. And then let us also take this. And we do not redefine that. That's what got us in trouble before, is it's a long double and then I'm also making a double with the same name, which apparently didn't throw an error. Maybe if it was the same word length, it would have thrown an error, but it was not. And bluey, we were in a world of hurt, so we're not going to do that this time. And then lastly, I got to go here and make this and then use it. Alrighty, so we've got that. Intrim is correct for being, actually at this point we can make intrim be 0 if we want. Don't have to be careful with it. it can be complete silence. And that's our input boost, and it can go up to a factor of 10, exactly like MAC-D and MAC-EQ. And I think that the Z filters are doing the same thing, so a lot of these are going to have that characteristic. And then the output is not a divide by, instead it is a multiply by, so it's safe from divide by 0, but it's outtrim instead. And lastly, we got a little maintenance to do up here before even trying to build, because I deleted some of these things, so now these don't mean anything. And same for here. These are all 0 to 1. I like doing that increasingly because I make the VSTs, and the VSTs default to that as a concept. And we can see that these are no longer being used for things, so we delete these as well. And we have maybe now just arrived at the final form of the plugin. We might be literally done and spend the rest of the live stream session just playing with it, seeing what it does. Or I could start doing the VST port of it, but that's probably less fun than playing with it. Meet YLowpass. What do we got? And do we have any further editing to do? That is only on one side. Now it's on both sides. I don't know why that happened. That's weird. The reason it's being so freaky is because all of this is cranked up really high. Yeah, dry wet. So this gets us to a resonate control that's normal-ish. There's our frequency. I should probably make resonate be something that makes sense. If I have it super low, this is kind of not a useful setting. I don't think that's very useful. Although if I set it to high resonate edge, what do we get? A weirdness, that's what we get. So res edge all the way up and resonate all the way down, we can get a sound, but it's a weird sound. And that's only when we crank filter up. And as I sneak it up, so that could be considered possibly useful. Not very useful. I'm going to want to look at what that range is. Because with no edge added, this starts to feel like Butterworth or something. This is not a resonant peak. And this is. And we'll dial this down to roughly unity gain again. Nice smooth little filter. And then if we add that res edge, that gets us in weird gnarly trouble. Let's stop for a second because everything seems to be working, but the resonate control, that is not really doing what I would want. Like turning it all the way down isn't really giving me a super low resonance thing, it's just cutting the audio out completely. So we're going to look back at that and see what I'm actually telling it to do. Reso goes up to a max of about 30. And its minimum is, well, this doesn't do anything, whereas this does. The sweep is from literally 0 to 20K, except for that we're limiting it by this. I can probably dial that back too. And by the same token, this doesn't have to have this added here. But the reso is also going to 0. And on a filter like this, settings of 0 are not that useful. So I'm thinking maybe what I'm going to want to do is add something so that the minimum setting is still obviously a filter. And just set it up so that maybe we have a steeper curve here going to the full like 30 or whatever. And we won't need this if we're always adding something. And if our minimum filter is like 0.5, that's not even as steep as Butterworth, but let's see what we do. Another option would be having the minimum filter be 0.7071. And that's going to be literally Butterworth. Another option is having it be the golden ratio. That could be fun, because I like throwing that in places, and that's not quite Butterworth, but I think it's one of the optimal kinds of filters. It's a different filter slope, and it has its own characteristics, and I don't think it's exactly one of the filters that one uses, but it's in the zone. It's in that zone where it's clearly a filter, but it's not any specific named one. So we'll try that. I also wonder whether 30 is too high for the resonance, because that's so steep that's like what you'd use in a more synthetic measurement analytical filter. But this is a filter with a voice, and when we get up that high, it's not terribly useful. So let's try maybe going up to a maximum Q of 10, and then plus the golden ratio, which is going to be not quite up to Butterworth, but pretty close. And Butterworth will be in the lower reaches of the control there somewhere. And then, of course, we're doing weird things with it, so we'll find out what it does. And we probably don't need this much of power factor either. Like when we're calculating the power factor in this way, 1 times and 1 divided by, it's just getting really extreme. I don't know if we need to go that far. So let's see what we get with that also being a 10. Because, you know, doing the power calculation is slow anyhow, so I'm basically beating up the poor little laptop doing this. Not doing anything with resampling at this time. Not exactly. If you wanted to do something that looked like that, look at the most recent tape delay and pitch delay, because those are using a resampling-like technique in a way. And we're going to fire up Alien Kittens 96 this time, see if it's acting similarly. especially now that I've eased off some of the load on the thing. Now, why are you only running one side? If I bypass you, do you? No, that's fine. If I turn res edge down? No. Output shouldn't have anything to do with this. If I make it all dry? No. Interesting. We got a behavior here. Have we got another divide by zero somewhere? That seems to make this program lose its mind. Where's my coffee? Oh, there we are. Pow factor A equals pow factor B. They start out as 0, but it specifically says here, pow factor B is always going to be 1 plus something. There's your problem. So what's causing that to die is that I'm starting one of the buffers out, and there is a position where these start out at 0. I'm like I'm initializing them, but they're starting out as 0. And it clearly shows here that that factor can never be 0 because it's being used as a divide. But when we initialize everything and we go pow factor A equals pow factor B, that was 0 too when we initialized it. And then we redo pow factor B, but hey, look here, pow factor A is still 0 until the next time around. So it goes through, it generates this number, which starts with this being 1.0 and only scales down to this one afterwards. And that means pow factor starts as 0 as well. And we look here and see, okay, times pow factor, but then we've got these two and we have a divide by 0 there. That's why that happened. If it had behaved itself some of the time, I would have not necessarily have spotted it, but here's where the problem is. Pow factor is always 1 or more, so we have to initialize it as that. Having done that, this will now work. Because it's a pretty severe thing for the poor plugin, the poor program to be dealing with. That's why it flipped out and fell over. And let's see whether I just told you the truth or whether I got it confused. This time, it should work first time. Yep. Shallowest of resonances. That's not taking out everything though. I could have frequency be lower than this. Oh God, yeah. Yeah, this is not right. For whatever reason, I have frequency really not cutting off low enough to do anything. So let's go and fix that now. I kind of needed it to be able to muffle right down to the bass regions, and that does not do it. There's the fixed frequency. Here's where we start. So this is what caused that to happen. Like 0.0001 was easily enough to muffle it right down to subsonics. That, or I could simply, no, it's probably fine. I took a 0 out, and that's what caused it to not go down to the subs any longer. I might check that for different sample rates, because what I've got here, well, hang on, here's something that I could do. we'll divvy this up into two things. Firstly, we take this away, which means I can also lose a set of parentheses. Then we do this, where we're now stopping it from being 0, and then we divide it by getSampleRate. So same deal here, still working with this, but now we say divide equal by getSampleRate. So if we had it at 0.001, and technically, to make it be the same number, we would be multiplying it by getSampleRate. Let's assume that that is like 44.1K. It would be the equivalent of going, if the frequency is less than 44.1. And this is the setting where it was not going down into the subsonic base. Well, if that's actually a frequency, then that would explain why. It's only rolling down to a little bit over 40 hertz, and we're hearing it as such. We're hearing like a 44 hertz thing. Whereas the previous one, it was willing to roll down to 4.1 hertz because it was an additional 0. And 4.1 hertz is very definitely subsonic. So we're going to want to split the difference in there. We don't want it to go only down to 40 hertz or so, or 50 hertz or so, but we also don't need it to go down to like 5. So let's call it like 15 and see what that gets us. This is now a frequency that goes up to 20K and goes down to around 15K. And then we divide it by whatever the getSampleRate is, and that'll give us the accurate measurement for whatever that number needs to be. Juggling. Look, I have multiple mugs. This has herbal tea in it. Celestial Seasonings Tension Tamer, to be specific. I enjoy that stuff. I put some stevia sweetener in it, and it's delicious. As delicious as this new frequency range. Up to the 96K again. It should be the same either way. Like that should get me there. Well, that's funny. Why are you still... Why are you still giving me troubles? I need both of you. Is the overall plugin working? No, it's not. It's knocking it over. Back into the breach. What's going on here? Did I in fact update that? Yes, I did. Outram is always multiplied, so that shouldn't be causing a problem. All of this looks as reasonable as it needs to look. This should be about right. The frequency sounded about right, but the channels were quirky on me. Are we using biquad A frequency, or should we be setting B? No, that seems about right. Resonance seems about right. Parentheses seem about right. That will definitely stop it from being 0 ever. So that should be okay. Power factor A seems about right. Out trim gets to be 0. That's not a problem. Oh, are we redefining any of those again? No. There's in trim, there's power factor, that's out trim. Those are all fine. Those are all how they're supposed to be. There's the multiply by in trim. Here's my ultra. I can start commenting things out at some point, and hopefully that'll show me what's going on. Here's our multiply and divide by power factor. That could get us in trouble with this kind of stuff. Here's out trim. That shouldn't get us in trouble with anything. Yeah, this is all pretty straightforward. I'm going to build it one more time. I'm going to like clean the targets, which means it'll do it all over from start, and then build again, which probably means it'll grind away and need to do it twice, because this particular configuration, I need to do 2 builds in order to make it work properly. Probably. No, it worked. Do it again just for good measure. And we'll replace the previous one. And let's load exactly the same file that we had before, and let's see whether it's actually able to work or whether something is wrong with it. Same settings, same everything. Do we get both channels? You'll get nothing. Nothing, sir. Good day. All right. And then occasionally you get something. But clearly, this is not right. Especially since when we bring dry wet in, we're not getting both channels. So whatever's happening here, it's breaking one of the channels. So the next thing that I'm going to do is start commenting out chunks and see if I can clear any of this up. For starters, let's see if we can take the ultrasonic out. That's probably not going to do a thing, but if it did, that would be interesting. And I'm kind of glancing over to see whether anything jumps out as being out of place, but it kind of doesn't. I doubt that would be it, but we're going to find out. And carefully not changing anything so that we can keep it broken the way that it was broken in order to observe what we do that changes the behavior, if anything. Hello. Now, why would you be doing that? If this is to be believed, it's that ultrasonic code that was doing something. And it really shouldn't be. It should be fine. Because now, it's not having a problem. We got our like subsonic with a little bit of resonance. We can increase the resonance. We're still getting just a hint of the audio because it's not a steep enough filter to really obliterate it completely. Gain's probably going to work normally, and then if we use res edge, we got that going on. So yeah, removing the ultrasonic filtering made it function. So something's wrong with the ultrasonic filtering. It seems to be made all out of multiplies, and that's odd. I mean, it's not odd that it's made out of multiplies, but it's odd that this would be causing a problem anywhere. So fix A. We don't actually need any of this to be all in scope is not covering the stuff that's commented out. Let me change that. I'm doing things that aren't going to help, but that come to mind. And hopefully more will be revealed. So we're going to start by looking at this and going, let's not have any of these be a version because that's not relevant to what we're doing. All of that array now becomes just biquad, and all of fix, oh, hang on, edit all in scope, becomes just a biquad. And something is going on in here where this is not what I had in mind. But we don't know quite what it is yet. So one thing at a time. We're reusing K and norm. We're establishing all these things. Let's go in and make sure that the H file is done. Scooch it over so you can see it. We want this to be this. We want this to be this. And it should build now. But what we don't know is why this L and R and stuff, that should be the same as this with this part left out. And this is the coefficient interpolation. We're not doing coefficient interpolation, so this other one shouldn't need it. It's a distinct enum. It has its own numbers, like this is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. And there's no overlap, including when it says total. It's not actually biquad totaled twice. Instead, it's just the one. So this shouldn't, it's not repeating any of its things. That seems to be done about right. We commented this out and it was okay. So what about this is not actually okay? Long double temp, we should be able to use that for something. That's the interpolation thing. We keep using it until we get to this point, at which point we're now using it for this. I suppose one possibility is thinking that I might need a separate variable for this stuff, but that seems kind of sketchy and weird. This is inside this, so this is establishing this. Hello. K, 10 impi times biquad fix free, impi times fix free. Norm is all of this stuff and this. These look about right too. Yeah, it's basically the same thing. I'm not redeclaring this, but I am reusing it. Well, I'm getting YLowpass finished as quickly as I can. Let's run this again and see if we go back to our unpleasant behavior where it wasn't working. Because in theory, I should be able to reproduce the problem by having it set the way that it was set. Copy it over to components, run the same one that was causing an issue before, with the same settings that were causing an issue before. And let's see if it, yep, fails to work. Something to do with this ultrasonic filter is giving us fits. Something to do with this ultrasonic filter is not working. Or to be specific, sometimes it works and sometimes it don't. Look at that. This time it didn't. This time it didn't. This time it didn't. It's not actually killing the program per se, but we can set it up so that it starts off in a condition where it's simply not running. It's simply not working. And if we comment out that filter, we're back in business again. So the next thing is, how are we instantiating it? We are counting up to fixed total and making everything be 0. Not that everything is supposed to be 0, but we're blanking out the numbers rather than having sheer randomness. So there is that. And it needs to be fixed total rather than biquad total because there's different numbers in these arrays. There's different numbers of things. And that is correct so far. So next question becomes, here's where things get sketchy for us. Can we tell it to be a different number? Like fixed roll-off gets to be 0.25 instead of this calculation. As we're referring to get sample rate again. If that is somehow wrong, or not working every time, that might be a problem. And fixed reso is already being defined as Butterworth, so that has to become this. And we are referring to these things where they're meant to go. Like Norm talks about reso, and B2 refers to reso, and those are still correct. And there's a divide in here too, so if X reso ended up being like 0 or something, which it can't really be, that would cause an issue. But it can't really be. I'm specifically telling it to be 0.7071. Although I could doctor that too. Let's do something else. Let's call it there. Now, oh, and I'm doing a silly thing here. We want these. There. Now I've told it to be somewhere in the middle of the sample rate, or actually I'll set it even lower because I'm working with a 96K thing. So we'll put it right down in the audible range. And we're also telling the resonance to be 10, which is quite steep. Both of those are far from being 0, and so this should make that filter, we'll force it to be something that's not supposed to be, and we'll see what it does. Because if it doesn't do the thing that I think it does, then something else is wrong. Up. See, it's only showing on one channel. Something's gone wrong. And then it's the other channel. And it might be both or neither. Seems to be swapping between them this time. And at this stage, I'm going to quickly go in and we're going to do everything here except assign the result to input sample again. So we'll let it do its calculations and see if that's still causing a problem of some kind. Because this should not be doing anything. It should be meaningless. And now it seems fine. Nice soft resonance, steep resonance with edge. Gnarly. Smooth. Just distort it. And then stop and start a little bit. And it's just fine. Something to do with this ultrasonic filter is not working correctly. So let's look at what we've got compared to, oh. I see what it is. Do you see what it is? I see what happened. See how this fixed position stuff for the filter says fix AO, fix A1, fix B1, fix B2. And see where the coefficient one says bike AO, bike SL1, bike A1, bike A2. See where the ultrasonic filter is not saying that. It's saying it's using the wrong things here. That's what's causing this. I can put some of this stuff right back because we're not using any of it. We're not using these values at all. We're generating this stuff and then we're ignoring it. We need to be using these things with this prefix here. That's where the real information we're looking for is, and we're not. We're using the stuff that's being generated here. And this kind of stuff. And then the interpolation code is generating these things. And observe the fix, which is quite literally fix. If I tell it to do this, everything will be fine. See that slight mismatch there? This is why I try to name things in the way that I do, because eventually when I spot what I did wrong, it just makes sense. And this is what I overlooked, the fact that I'm calling this, I'm not calling it biquad. Now let's see whether that's actually true. My assumption is I just fixed the problem. And that may or may not be true. But I do know that even if those were things that would work within the biquad filter that does the actual sweeping, that doesn't mean that it worked within the ultrasonic filter. Those numbers that were fine in the biquad might be just doomed for the ultrasonic filter. And so we're going to find out. If it works really well, we'll add another ultrasonic filter just for fun. Because why not? This is the smooth gnarly filter. It's alive. It's making nice high frequencies. Cool, we can make a dong. This could be useful. Kind of a sync effect there. We can get this nasty gatiness. There's a gnarly filter. That res edge, man, it's really got a quality to it. So yeah, that was the problem. It is now fixed. Toast with some tension tamer herbal tea. Yay. And we're going to add another ultrasonic filter after that gnarliness because we can. And now that we have it working, it'll be a straightforward, simple procedure. Same enum. And we're going to go to fix A and fix B this time. And we're going to, the whole idea of doing this is so that I can like throw more variations in there quickly when I need to. We're going to instantiate everything. A and B. We're going to scroll down here and get to where we are defining these things. And we're going to make them the same frequencies because we can. we're going to quickly do a little find and replace for everything. Oh no, hang on, I don't need to do that. I can do it more simply than this. These things are updated and this is not. So if I edit all in scope to be fix, A, then all of this is updated, including this here. We're still using, these would not be blue anymore if they needed updating. So those are still correct. This is right. K and norm are the same, and what we can do is select this and then a little quick copy pasty. Technically, we don't even need this quite this way, but we're doing it anyway. And every step of the way, we're defining all of them to be about the same. So we can work from the beginning anywhere we want. Like if we're making A2 be the same as A0, we can go from fix A0 because we've defined it up here. I have read about antiderivative anti-aliasing. I haven't coded it yet. I have my own ideas as to ways of getting around oversampling, or it's not really like oversampling itself isn't necessarily an issue for me. It's the way that people do it. Like in tape delay and pitch delay, which are fairly recent, what I'm doing is running a very fast sample buffer and just naively interpolating from sample point to sample point in basically a straight line and then sampling from in there. And I can do my own kinds of filtering. I don't necessarily want to use brick wall filtering for any of these things. It's just a question of what sound it produces and how it goes about doing the things that it does. There's a variety of like physics modeling things that I could do that could produce interesting and useful results. And it's all a matter of like, is it creating the sound rather than is it following the directions for how one's supposed to oversample? So yeah, we've done this. Now we have fix A and fix B able to be used for this stuff. And these are all the right frequency things, and we're using them properly. So what we're going to do is jump in here, copy this, because we have temp defined as something. And then after we do all of this, we're going to smooth after the out trim even. Just because the out trim is already smoothed, but you know, if there are any ultrasonics in the slight changes of the out trim, then filtering after that will smooth them. And in order to do this, we change these fix A's to fix B, because it's a different other separate filter. And remember to get all of them. Don't leave any of them out. And that should have added a second ultrasonic filter, a fixed frequency ultrasonic filter that's using the right parameters and things. And technically it's using the left channel because it's capable of being used as a stereo filter, and I'll be using that in the VST version and any stereo versions of this plugin that I make. Compile it, it succeeds. And now let's see what it sounds like. And if this succeeds, we are done with our hack-in for today, and YLowpass lives and is available. Well, next week it'll be available. There is a bit of a queue now. think I like the sound of this better. With no resonance, we've got a normal resonant filter that's a little distorty. That's actually kind of nice. This is not going to act like a regulation biquad filter because it does have that distorted, it's got console 6 inside, which is not like any of my other filters yet. Console 6 is a little distortier than using sine for it. So if we have it super resonant, we get this. Yeah, because of the ultrasonic filtering, it's peaking a little hotter than literally 0, so I'll pad it. A little less resonance. A little more. Yeah, that resonance is not right. I should be able to have it in halfway and have it sound like a resonating filter, so we've clearly got a little too much control on this. And that means reso, power get parameter 3,4, too much taper. We need to have it be less, so let's try considerably less. Let's try 2. And then having it all the way to the side will be the no resonant, and then we'll have a little more control over things. And let's also increase the maximum resonance to like a factor of 15. We don't have to go all the way to 30, but it's a synth filter. So it can start being really mellow. I could start at Butterworth, and I'm deciding not to. I'll have it be a little bit shallower than Butterworth for the mellowest case, but then you immediately get into having it do something. And that's probably the right configuration, so let's try that again. Build succeeded. And this time we're going to run 192K and see if that sounds any different or has any helpfulness to it at all. Full crank. Yeah, that's a lot of resonance. That's good. Halfway. It still sounds like a synth, so we're good. No resonance. No resonance, but edge. Yeah, it makes it crackly. Just a little bit of edge. Let's bring in some of that resonance. Gain. Pad it. Let's try to dial in that res edge to something interesting sounding. Nothing. Well, I still hear a distortion. That's just distortion. This is where it gets crunchy. This is plain. That's just a touch of crackliness. throw a bunch of gain on. More edge. Hey David, I got a plug-in after your own heart. It's really nasty. Check this out. And you can go even farther. I can do this. Oh. Also get some gnarly hi-hats and things this way too. Yeah, a little gatiness. Forcing it to be as nasty as possible. And then if you don't like that any, we can stop distorting it. Go back to the world of nice. Pad the input a little bit. Then we can throw all the resonance we want on there, and it'll still clip the peaks of the resonance, but we can pad it nicely. So we got a nice little, like if we want it to be a little cleaner, we can have a nice steep resonance. We might have just got, this is something I wanted to do with another thing. I wanted to make a plugin that would convincingly do the resonant behavior of an Alpha Juno. Because what I got over here, Alpha Juno synthesizer, and I've wanted something that would make the resonant behavior of that when you crank it up do the distorty thing that it does, and I think I just got there. I did not expect that. That is a hidden blessing. Because it does this, right? You will have the resonant peaks honk a little bit. They clip, they distort. And if we adjust the gain of this just right, I think we got there. I think we got there. I think it'll start again. And we're running the 192K. This is what the Alpha Juno does. Is those resonant peaks honk. They clip, but they soft clip. And that's literally what we're getting. Nice. Nice. I didn't see that coming. And what that means is I can do it on other stuff, like, for instance, load up a drum sample. And I can distort that until it does the thing I want. And this might be not unlike the Alpha Juno filter. Let's distort it. And I have to try this on some synthesizers and something like Bespoke, because this definitely has that resonant honk on the filter. The Alpha Juno will totally honk like this. I don't know about Juice, man. Like the free and open source people that I know of, like Bespoke and Surge, are all using Juice. And they're pretty serious about that stuff, so yeah. Which means not only could you use Juice in a free and open source context, but also that if it becomes not okay to use, there's a bunch of communities that will be taking the same path as you and finding something else. What you would do is, if you're using Juice and you're using free and open source, and there becomes a problem with Juice, go immediately to the Surge Synthesizer Discord and the Bespoke Synth Discord, and there will be people there who are also observing the same problem and fixing it. So yeah, I would say Juice is fine for open source for that reason. It's not only because of what the Juice people allow, but it's also because there are people who also value open source, and if something goes wrong, they will be fixing it for their own projects, and you can do likewise. Nice. I think we're done here. I think that'll work. So yeah, this is exciting enough that maybe that's going to be next Sunday, because there's a variety of stuff in the queue. Again, I have a update on clip only that is coming, and that's pretty exciting if you like clip only or 80 clip, because it's an update that actually supersedes 80 clip. It's now better than the most recent 80 clip. And I've got an update on pressure that I'm using for an album mixing project that I'm currently doing. But yeah, this YLowpass, pretty exciting. It was already exciting until I realized that with the new form, the console 6 processing inside it, I was getting that Alpha Juno filter sound. And whew, that's even more exciting. Even if it didn't have the the filter sharpening factor, like that nasty distortion and glitchiness that you can add. Even if it didn't have that, it would be exciting because it's getting into that zone and I'm going to want to be using it for stuff. I don't think the filters can be translated to state variable formats, but the same principles could be applied in state variable formats. If you want to know more about that, what you could do is do a state variable filter and show me, make it open source. And yeah, clip only 2 will kick 80 clip 7's butt, assuming that you can do your boosting ahead of time, because clip only is still a featureless plugin where it's just a safety clip. And you go in there, everything is hard-coded, and it'll clip to around minus 0.2 dB at all times. But the thing about Pressure 5, and one of the reasons why it's exciting, is that Pressure 5 has clip only 2 built into it and a output trim control that now no longer goes only to unity gain. The output trim control on Pressure 5 now adds boost. And the clipping is post dry wet. So you can combine like compression with dry wet. I made the muiness control always go to positive rather than going to negative, because now what you do in order to get New York style compression is set it up with compression and then use dry wet to bring in the main, and then it will clip after the combination of that and the dry wet, meaning that it's got a safety clip on the very output of it. So you could use it simply as a clip only stage. Set it to full dry and it'll do the clip only thing. But then if you want to boost it, you start throwing in gain and using pressure and doing that. So yeah, all of this stuff is coming. All of this stuff is interesting. I feel like YLowpass is so exciting that might be first, and I'll like bump it ahead of the queue, but the other things are coming too. So on that note, let me switch to this other mouse and move over to like OBS, and it's been fun working on this stuff today with you. Like the various, walking through all the silly mistakes that I made and going like, oh, see, did you see what I did there? Do you see what is wrong? And I shouldn't be proud that I'm the first person to spot that, but because I should have spotted it in the very beginning before I even wrote it. But yeah, that's how it do. This is what it's like doing the coding for this kind of thing, is making these changes and doing these things and then going, oh, the internals of that filter should say fix dash this or that rather than biquad dash this or that. Oh yeah, there is no BeatDruid. BeatDruid got attacked by spammers and completely filled with garbage, and I had to put it down. I'll try to keep up with stuff like that, but BeatDruid stopped being a thing when the spammers found it. I've had to do things on Airwindows.com where spammers were abusing trackbacks, so now it can no longer do trackbacks. And it's like, yeah, figuring out ways of being able to do what I do without spending literally 100% of my time swatting down spammers doing various things. At any rate, I'm going to say good day for now, and it's very exciting that I've got this. I'll be making versions of it as quickly as I can because I want to start playing with it in Bespoke. I want to start running other synthesizers without using their internal filters into this as the outboard filter for whatever it is that I'm using and see what I get out of it. And yeah, on that note, I will say good day, and I'll talk to you folks later. Oh, I did update all the tag pages on Airwindows. Anyways, laters.